Crypto runs the table. Moish and I reveal our deepest wishes, and holy cow, number go up. Coming up next on Block and Order. Welcome to Block and Order, the show that explores the legal issues facing the world of Web3 and beyond. I'm Kyle Lawrence, and with me, as always, he is feeling the thunder, Mr. Moish Peltz, everybody.
Ba-boom! Hey, Kyle, how you doing?
Doing well, man. I love your shirt.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but it says "Feel the Thunder."
Very apropos these days.
Yeah, I was going to say, feel the thunder we have. Bitcoin has hit something like 7 consecutive all-time highs this week. It's feeling good.
What's the price at right now? I'm just out of curiosity. I haven't looked in about 17 minutes, so I'm curious as to what it is right now.
All right, you guess, and I'll tell you.
I'm going to guess 91.
Lower.
Oh, wow. Yeah, look at that. 89,776. Oh, God, the good times are over.
Oh, I have 90.52. So you have 87?
89,776.
89.7.
Yeah.
I guess we're looking at different markets.
I guess so. Look at that. That means they're both wrong.
Somewhere around 90,000 as we record this.
That's a good sign. Well, Moish, in sort of honor of the fact that we have a new administration coming in, I don't know if honor is the right word, but we do in fact have a new administration coming in. We just had the launch of our second season. We were really blessed to have SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce, a guest on the show last time, which was just a marvelous experience for all of us. I hope she enjoyed it as well. And I think that leads us into somewhat of a slightly different episode than what we normally do, where we have the point counterpoint, PTI style back and forth of the, topics du jour. We're going to do a little bit of that today, but I think we're going to focus more on kind of where we are and where we're going to go now that there's sort of a new frontier laid out before us. So, Moish, why don't you kick off sort of our newfangled order today with, our Hester review and wish list.
So look, we had Hester Peirce on our show a couple weeks ago. And from that, which you're right, Kyle, that was an amazing experience. And we were all, it was incredible to have her on and to hear her extremely candid answers to everything we asked. She didn't shy away from anything. After our show concluded, and hat tip to Veronica Irwin and Laura Shin and the Unchained Crypto team, they covered our show and they published an article titled "Trump Promised Clear Crypto Regulations, but the SEC Might Not Be Prepared to Give Them." And I'm not even sure we kind of take away from our recording that this idea that Hester had said that the SEC was kind of hadn't prepared the next administration to give good guidance. So I think, and then Hester ultimately replied to that article, at least on the Twitter, the tweet of it. And I pushed back a little bit. So you can go there. We'll link the article and you can go read for yourself. But one thing that she did say basically was that it's on us. It's on the industry. It's on the legal people in the industry to think up, what are the things that we want to propose, get accomplished in a new political era. And of course, she recorded the episode before the election. Right. But I think either way, we're having this conversation. Now we're having a very specific conversation. So Kyle, what homework do we as the industry need to do? What's your wish list for what can be accomplished in the next few years?
It's a great question. And I think that if you were to ask me, as you just did, the first thing I would want to do is make sure that the SEC's mission of investor protection is really front and center. And we talked about with the commissioner last time, the SEC has a thing of investor protection, but that kind of runs afoul of innovation and it gets in the way and forces companies who are so afraid of regulation to go overseas or to abandon their projects altogether. And I think that what they really need to focus on, how do we in fact protect these investors without compromising the level of innovation that we can see in the space, without seeing the creativity and the entrepreneurship and just all of these people who are doing these really wonderful new things and building on new technologies. That's how we advance. And I think that's the key. Investor protection without damaging the good work that other people are doing. That would be number one for me. Moish, what would be number one for you? It's a great question. Thank you.
Well, it's funny because you're saying, well, investor protection, but also innovation. I'm pretty sure that's like the mission of the SEC.
It is, but they screw it up.
But they just haven't done it, at least in this industry.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I mean, look, I'm the IP guy. I love NFTs. For me, it's really providing guidance on, when an NFT is and is not a security, and then either allowing some sort of regulatory sandbox that, Hester Peirce is one of the persons that has proposed this, or like a crypto version of, some securities offering, like a Reg CF or a
Mm,
Reg A, where there's significantly relaxed rules. There are disclosures, and you know what you're buying into. But once you check the box and get up those minimal rules, you should then have the ability to raise capital up to like some, reasonable amount, and then do the Matt Levine,
right.
check the box of, I understand I'm throwing my money away and never going to see it again. I would love to see something like that. I know there is an NFT act that's been proposed that would basically say NFTs are not securities, but I don't know that it does all the other stuff. So I think that's where we could focus.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, I'm on board with that. The other thing I think I would like to see is I've probably talked about this on the show before, and you've certainly heard me, complain about it. Is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, for example, was the wrong thing, but for the right reason. The idea behind it was correct. They wanted to protect investors. It was in the wake of Enron and Tyco and some of those other very high profile economy impacting scandals and collapses. But what we cannot do is have such a wide sweeping piece of legislation comes out that uniformly treats all of these assets the same. They're not. And that's something that I hope that with the crypto, the crypto force behind this legislation, that they're teaching Congress how this all works, so we can have stablecoin legislation, something to address NFTs, as you just said, something that can address, DeFi, but just it has to be separated. It cannot be lumped in together. That would be just catastrophic if they do that.
Yeah, and there's like, look, I've seen other proposals for tax fixes and
Right.
gutting the broker regs and things like the Bank Secrecy Act. And this is also like just taking a step away from the SEC itself and thinking, well, it's not just the SEC that needs reform as approaching crypto. It's also Treasury and, every regulatory agency that
Sure.
touches crypto could have a change. So, look, I think this is basically. I asked you, Kyle. I'd like to ask the audience. I think this is an open call, right? If there's something that you're working on, I would love for someone to come on the show and tell us, like, what are you working on? What are you planning to reach out into the world and say, hey, this is what we need to do, and here's actual like concrete legislation that we can start wedging into the political system and saying, hey, you need to consider this, and here's why. Because I think we're going to have a window to do that. Probably not. Like, I think if it's going to happen, it needs to happen now. It needs to happen in like the next 100 days,
Right.
not in like a year, right? Otherwise, we kind of lose the thread.
Momentum is key. You definitely want to seize upon it. Yeah.
All right. So our next topic is, again, staying on the political train here. So look, crypto raised about $135 million to spend in different U.S. Senate and House races, and it seems like there are about 48 races where these different super PACs spent money, and it looks like they went basically 100%. They hit 48 of 48. I think they did what they intended to do. Now I know Fairshake and a few of these other super PACs targeted these campaigns in a way that they knew they had a pretty high chance of success. Personally, I think it's kind of a shame that there's so much money in politics, but these are the rules we have. This is the industry we have, and this is the result we achieve. So Kyle, what do you think? Is crypto now a real player in the political industry by virtue of industry just spending tons of money to get these legislative outcomes?
Well, you stole my thunder a little bit when you said you wish there wasn't so much money in these races, but you're right. I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game. That's just the reality of the world we live in. If you have a lot of money to spend, chances are you're going to do all right in these elections, especially following, Citizens United. It's just the way it is. I don't make the rules. But to answer your question directly, how could you possibly deny that? Look at the just the outflow of support that this industry has. I mean, when Trump was at Bitcoin Nashville earlier this year, people were going crazy for it. Not just there, but everybody in the industry was so excited because, love him or hate him, he is a one of the most well-known people in the world, shining a bright light on this industry, and only good things can come from that. And this is more ripple effects from that. And regardless of who won the election, obviously with Trump, it's going to be a little bit more favorable, presumably, than it would have been under a President Harris administration. But be that as it may, there is this belief that the whole world is going to kind of open up, and the U.S. is going to be not only more welcoming of people trying to capitalize in this industry and sell these assets and partake in innovation and do wonderful things, that this is just a no-brainer for me. I can't see how crypto isn't here to stay. I mean, especially when you run the table like this, 100% of all the elections that you backed. I mean, I don't know. That's pretty good. I'm not an accountant, but I'd say they did pretty well.
It's a pretty good hit rate. 100% is pretty good.
100% is pretty good. It's better than I got.
Yeah, look, I think there's some big names. I think most notably is Sherrod Brown being unseated by Bernie Moreno, and that's who is a former crypto executive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sending a message, I think, shockwaves perhaps through the political apparatus. So I guess the question is this momentum going to be continued and pushed through?
Right.
Now that we have people in these seats in that are going to be backing the industry. And this is something, we heard, harkening back to what you mentioned about Bitcoin Nashville, is I think sandwiching the Trump speech was basically different people. I think one of them was Edward Snowden.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was one of the organizers of I think a Bitcoin core developer. And basically saying as part of that, that speech that be careful what you wish for.
Right.
Don't trust these politicians coming up and saying everything that they're going to be saying. And I think there's some of that too. Let's be optimistic, but let's also be skeptical. Let's make sure that there's no kind of letting the guard down, saying, hey, we spent the money, we got the people in we want in there. Let's just let them kind of take care of business. I think there is now this okay, we're going to have perhaps a political apparatus that's going to listen to us, but we need to now speak and say what we want and still kind of push that ball. And I think the reaction that was so extreme here is really a counter. All this money was raised and was spent because of what happened under the current administration, right? So we got to keep going, right? Job's not over.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head before when you were saying that this legislation needs to happen relatively sooner. One, for momentum purposes, but two, just due to the election cycle in this country, it's not going to be that long of a time before we're already talking about midterms. And if this legislation hasn't been done at that point, you wonder if it will during Trump's administration, just quite honestly. I mean, I don't think anybody in this country anymore I hesitate to use the word naive, but naive enough to think that when somebody's running for office, they say, here's 1,000 things I'm going to do, that they're going to do all of them. It's not possible, even in the best of terms. And I'd be saying the same thing if Harris had won. So if Trump can get through a fifth of what he promised at that conference, I mean, that would be good for the industry no matter what. So we'll see.
Well, turning to our next topic, while we're on it, I mean, what first day promises do you think are actually achievable on day one?
Right.
So one of them we spoke about with Commissioner Peirce, I guess maybe indirectly, is firing Gary Gensler, right? Which I think there's been some pushback that, well, you can't really fire him. You can demote him and appoint another chair, but he's not really fireable except for good cause. Well, I think the industry would say there probably is good cause. So I'm imagining that the political people might as well. The other one I think is interesting, and I wanted to ask you about, is the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So Kyle, I mean, how realistic do you think it is to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve? Do you think this actually happened? Do you think this is just a symbolic thing? Or you think the Senator Lummis's Bitcoin Act, where we're going to put 5% of the total Bitcoin supply into reserves, is actually going to happen? What do you think?
I mean, I wish I had the crystal ball and could determine whether or not it will happen. I know it's a very popular, initiative, and if it goes through, there is a belief that if they do establish this reserve, which to what is, maybe we'll back up a second. What is this reserve? It is a strategic reserve, is a stock of a systematically important input which can be released to manage serious disruptions in supply. Most famously, you see this with oil. Obviously,
Yeah,
gold.
strategic oil reserve. Yeah,
Exactly. We
strategic
all know what
gold
that is.
reserve, Fort Knox. Yeah, you got it.
Exactly. All the gold in your Fort Knox. So that's basically what Bitcoin would do. It would be a hedge against inflation. It would be a hedge against, strong fluctuations in the value of the dollar. Most simply put, I know it's more complicated than that, but just for our listeners, that's basically what it is. And the reality is that if that were to happen now, I mean, you're seeing these price quotes about Bitcoin just skyrocketing into $500,000 per token, if something like that were to happen. And I think that something like that is easy to achieve. It's not something that I think would require a significant amount of bureaucratic red tape to cut through. And it's the kind of thing that could just generate real shockwaves into this ecosystem. One, because I mean, crypto people in the US will do backflips if that happens. Who doesn't want to see their value of their portfolio go up like that? And two, um, just what it would mean for the US dollar. It would really put the United States at the forefront of this kind of tech. Now, this is not without its detractors. Mike Novogratz, the founder of Galaxy Digital, says that doing this would kind of create almost a Bitcoin arms race, almost like a Cold War kind of effect that you saw back in the early 80s. And listen, he's a smart guy, and it's an interesting counterpoint to what Trump and his supporters have been talking about doing with Bitcoin. So, Moish, with that in mind, with what Mike Novogratz said, what do you think? Is this a good idea? Aside from the price considerations, is this a good idea for us to do this, or does Bitcoin belong to the entire world as opposed to just us?
I think it is a good idea, and I think it's relatively realistic for some version of this to happen. Why do I think it's a good idea? Well, I think I can answer both questions basically. Why is it a good idea, and why do I think it's likely to happen? And the reality is the U.S. government is already the largest holder of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So all they have to do is like do nothing,
right?
right?
Yeah,
and they have the reserve. They just have to keep it,
right?
Okay. So I think they can do that, and I think further. I mean, like, look, I was looking up the strategic oil reserve. It's like, well, it's not that's like a reserve, and it's like some bureaucrats like, hey, let's have a reserve. It was an executive order. There's a whole like slate of legislation that like made that happen, and it was very strategic in the 1970s in response to oil embargoes and inflation and all these things. I think you're seeing a kind of a similar setup here, where all this inflation's kind of going crazy. People are concerned about runaway inflation and the rising debt, and the debt ceiling is a political football that happens like every 2 years. I think for all those reasons, like there's going to be a political like outlet. It's like a steam valve escape of like, let's buy Bitcoin. And I think you've seen Michael Saylor has had a lot of success already. And I think you're seeing, him, and you said Novogratz are saying they should do this, and here's why. And these arguments are out there, and I think they're appealing for nation states. And I think you're right. I think once if it were the U.S., El Salvador and Bhutan, we've already talked about, have already had a stockpile,
Right.
but their stockpile's about like $500 million or $1 billion, and like peanuts, right? I mean, I think that's the question. Like, can the U.S. actually move in with size? Like, yeah, if they have $10 billion and they keep it, like, cool, that's great. That's great for the Bitcoin market. But does that even like scratch the surface on like
true.
our debt position? I mean, can like the U.S. government actually go in and buy like $100 billion of Bitcoin? And if they did that, like, what would that mean for like other nation states and this arms race and the price of Bitcoin and all these? So like, that's where it kind of gets like silly. And it's like fun to imagine. I don't think it's like realistic to imagine those. It's like, yeah, that might, if that happened, it's going to be like a procedural step-by-step kind of process. But that's,
that's something that I always think about, just kind of philosophically. And I sort of teased it a minute ago, which is if they do this and it does in fact drive the price up, and everybody would, and their defense, U.S. defenses would be like, well, yeah, but look what it did to the price. How awesome is that? For the people in El Salvador and Bhutan and these countries in Africa that are under France's economic thumb, it's great for you guys. And they'd be like, well, yeah, but you have it all. Like, how are we supposed to get it? It's a finite supply. So I think there's going to be a push-pull component to it. And, and I don't mean to poo-poo the United States efforts there, because listen, we hold Bitcoin. That would be great. But, in the global scheme of things, I think there's more to consider than just our own economic needs. I know it's America first, all
Yeah,
that,
I
but
think
yeah,
that's fair. I think both that's right. It's like we need to consider more than just our own selfish interests and making money as a country, but also like you own Bitcoin, I own Bitcoin. Why shouldn't the U.S. government, like our law firm owns Bitcoin? Why shouldn't the U.S. government own Bitcoin? Um, so I think increasingly both governments and corporates and institutions are going to be asking a question of like not if I should own Bitcoin, but how much should I own?
right. Yeah, good point.
All right, well, moving on to our lightning round. What better segue than to talk about Michael Saylor? So Michael Saylor tweeted that this year, MicroStrategy treasury operations have delivered a Bitcoin yield of 26 and change percent improvement, providing a benefit of 49,936 Bitcoin to our shareholders. That's an equivalent of 157 Bitcoin per day, which is effectively equivalent with operating like a large scale Bitcoin miner. So Kyle, like this is incredible. How's this even possible that this has happened? I mean, who looks better today than Michael Saylor in this industry?
Well, arguably, I don't know, because recently he also turned heel and said that Bitcoiners don't need to hold their own private keys. We should trust. This is his quote: "Trust the government and financial institutions, as those authorities would never confiscate Bitcoin held on centralized exchanges." I don't even know where to begin with that.
I mean, this is the whole dichotomy here of he's the most successful captain of industry from purchasing Bitcoin, but he seems to have this really odd position about the whole decentralized, non-custodial nature of it itself.
It's
So,
crazy.
yeah, it's crazy. Oh, that's scary. That's scary.
I
I mean,
know.
right? You want the winners, the champions of the industry, to also believe in the decentralized kind of private key aspect of it,
Right.
running your own nodes and all those things. And
It,
I think, to give him credit, I think he does believe that, but I think he also believes in making money. And I think he recognizes that he's making 26% yield on his Bitcoin by doing this.
I just you can't tell Bitcoiners to trust the government. They're not going to screw you over. Even if you even if you do believe that the government will not actively screw you over, as I like to think, I wouldn't go that far. Come
Yeah,
on now.
I think that harkens back to our word of caution
Yeah.
that just because the political tides seem to be shifting in your favor, don't drink your own Kool-Aid.
No. Exactly. Well, next up, Stripe has acquired the stablecoin platform Bridge for $1.1 billion, marking the single largest acquisition in the crypto space to date, which I actually thought was hard to believe. I thought there would have been one or two that are a little bit more than that, but no. I learned something today. This strategic move allows Stripe to expand into the blockchain sector, enhancing its payments infrastructure with stablecoin and crypto tech, while positioning itself as a key player in the growing digital asset market. Moish, are we going to see a lot more of this consolidation in the space with the big players moving in and race to the top kind of thing?
Yes.
You heard it, folks.
Yep, that's it. No, look, there's been a lot of talk about the potential economic benefits of the new administration. I think one of them is definitely the idea that there's going to be a lot more M&A buy sell activity. This was I think a pre-election transaction, so it's I think though just a preview of what's going to come. And I think with interest rates potentially going down, a more business friendly environment, perhaps the FTC is one of the agencies that might be a little less hostile to transactions happening now within a new administration. I think you're going to see a lot more transactions just generally. And I think it would be surprising if we didn't see a lot more crypto M&A transactions happening.
I agree.
I'm surprised that this is the first like basically $1 billion transaction.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
Cool. Congratulations, Stripe. All right, next up, the Securities and Exchange Commission has issued a Wells notice to Immutable, a blockchain gaming platform, signaling that its investigation into possible violations of security laws. Immutable had criticized the SEC's approach, describing it as another one of these regulation by enforcement series of vague and under research attacks on the firm. And the firm vowed to fight back. So, Kyle, I think this was something that I have for you is we have Immutable. Who else is getting a like last day of the year Wells
Yeah.
notice or lawsuit from the SEC before we flip the calendar year and head over to a new SEC administration?
It'd be really funny. We should go on Polymarket and place a bet as to what is going to be, in fact, the last one that gets filed under Gensler's watch. I think we should do that. It would also be kind of funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but interesting to note if in fact, Gary Gensler is no longer with the SEC come next year, if they just file Wells notices for every single entrant in the space. I don't think they can do that, but it'd be kind of comical if they did. That's one last.
Yeah, I mean, I still think you need a majority of commissioners to initiate an action. I don't know. Do you know what the threshold is for sending out a Wells notice?
That I don't know offhand, actually.
I mean, yeah, it'd be a little like everyone gets a little stocking stuffer.
Yes, that's right. Wells, hey, Merry Christmas. Here's a Wells notice for you. Go have fun.
Yeah, look, you mentioned Polymarket. I think Polymarket. We saw the CEO actually got his phone seized today by the FBI. Potentially could be another recipient, but we should have a Polymarket market for who receives a Wells notice before the end of the year.
I love it. I'm all in on it.
And Immutable has already resolved to yes. So there you go.
All right. Well, next up, Jimmy Petronas, who definitely dresses up as Harry Weasley on Halloween. He's the Florida CFO, states that the state holds $800 million in crypto-related investments and is exploring further expansion into digital assets. Petronas further said he would, quote, not be surprised to see the figure grow under a Trump administration. Shocker there. Moish, I'm surprised more states aren't doing this. I mean, is Florida just that far ahead of the curve? I know you have Miami and all the, a lot of the conferences there, and it is something of a hub, but I'm surprised to see not more of this.
Yeah, there's definitely a Florida man buys Bitcoin joke in there somewhere. Look, this ties directly into our segment earlier about the idea that, corporates, institutions, governments are now looking to buy more Bitcoin. Why shouldn't states put it on their treasury? Why shouldn't, like Microsoft had an investor questionnaire saying, should we or shouldn't we put Bitcoin on our balance sheet?
Right.
I mean, that's like one of the top 5 largest companies in the world. So, I think it really is this idea that everyone with, spare cash treasury is now considering, not only should I buy Bitcoin as part of my treasury operations, but how much should I buy? And I'd imagine $800 million for the state of Florida is probably not a ton of money, but it's a lot of money. So, there you go.
You can pay for some of the insurance claims.
Yeah, no, that's no. There's an idea. Bitcoin-backed, hurricane insurance.
I mean,
it couldn't be less solvent than the current market.
I just got dropped by my homeowner's insurance for no reason because they went out of business, and now I have to get new insurance. So yeah, I'm all for it. Let's go. Bitcoin it up.
Bitcoin it up. You heard it here first, folks. All right, next topic. The U.S. government was hacked for $20 million. That is, there was a cyber attack resulting in the theft of about $20 million in crypto assets held by the U.S. government, the largest holder of crypto, and exploiting vulnerabilities in the government cryptocurrency wallet, which was storing funds. But then the sequel here is once this was reported that it was a government wallet, the person who did the exploit returned almost all the funds. So, Kyle, if you had stolen funds from a government and then it was on the front page of a crypto newspaper, would you keep it or would you return it?
I would definitely keep it. I mean, at that point, you already have it. It's a come and catch me, catch me if you can kind of thing. I mean, I guess, some people love to applaud the person for returning it. It's like when somebody hits your car at the, you're at the store and somebody dings you and they leave a note. It's like, oh, how wonderful. They left a note. No. You're supposed to do that. It's called living in a society and respecting other people. So all joking aside, I one would have kept it, but two, if I was going to be arrested, I would probably return it because I'm a unscrupulous person, I suppose. Now that I say that out loud,
you gotta immediately. Oh my god, I sold from the wrong fucking person. You immediately send that back and be like, "Whoopsies!"
I would just go right to Bhutan.
That was an accident.
Be with my people.
I'm just going back to my day job. Didn't happen. Yeah, I mean, look, there's the Wired article about Zach XBT I've seen the capabilities of former government investigators. You do not want to be holding. Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah,
Return the money.
fair point.
All right, and our last topic: the Nigerian court has ordered the release of Tigran Gambarian, the Binance executive who was wrongly detained and held since earlier in the year in Nigeria. And so apparently his health had deteriorated. His legal team continued to push for his release. And finally, he was sent back home, back in the U.S. So congratulations to Tigran. Welcome home. Congratulations and thank you to everyone that worked to get him back home. It's a shame that this happened. It's a shame that he was in prison for so long. And really, I hope the current administration for the time that's left and the next administration does more to make sure that this does not happen again.
Yeah. And it was a shame the U.S. response. I know we talked about it on prior episodes. They were not really, putting their best foot forward to try to get him released under what was really dubious circumstances. So, listen, happy for the outcome. Very unfortunate that his health has deteriorated to the point of, I think he's going to have prolonged complications from this. There was a statement from his wife a couple of days ago about this. I mean, that whole thing is a shame, but thankfully he's out and can resume, living a normal life free of this, this terrible news.
That's nuts.
Yeah, crazy. Well, that wraps it up for this very special episode of Block and Order. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on all our socials. Links are down below in the show notes. Of course, if you have any comments or any questions for us, please leave comments wherever you can. Block and Order is available on all platforms where podcasts are available, as well as on YouTube. Remember, this show is meant for informational and entertainment purposes only. This is not intended to be legal advice or financial advice. Please hire your own advisors if you're going to take the plunge. Neither discussion of nor the fact that Moish and I may own any of the assets we discuss on the show is meant to serve as an endorsement of them. Buyer beware. Very special thank you to producer Abby. Without her, the show would not be possible. So on behalf of Moish Peltz, I'm Kyle Lawrence. See you next time, folks.
See you next time.